Wonderful.
You bet.
Thank you.
So,
Pen?
I got a pen.
Okay.
all right. So, one thing I learned from my group, smaller group discussion, is there's a lot of type of mentorship. And tonight we're talking specifically what you can do to go and mentor people in our community. But, talking. So if you have any more questions, come ask Joe. Joe has done a lot of research, and he's ready to answer all your questions. All right? But we were talking so someone can be a mentor just through example. I'm sure we all have people we look up to. But then we also, maybe have like a historical mentor, someone within history that we look to, and so you read about. Mine, I actually had to take one of my first classes in seminary was a vocation orientation class, and we had historical mentors, and mine just happened to be Thomas Merton. So, so you can find a historical mentor and read about him or her. Always good.
I'm not familiar. Who is he? I'm sorry.
He was a Catholic monk, Trappist monk, pacifist,
French Trappist
big
monk.
social, yeah.
He wrote the book 7-Story Mountain.
Oh.
Wrote a lot of good stuff. He's a cool guy. So yeah, tonight's big idea. So we're just going with the assumption that we're all leaders. You wouldn't be here if you weren't a leader in this church. So we're all here because we are leaders. And so the idea is how to train someone to take your place, which is always extremely important. Maybe you have to do this in your job place, where you hire someone to take your place as you move on. In fact, that's kind of really one of the first commandments in the Bible. Be fruitful and multiply. And so we need to be fruitful in our leadership by training and mentoring others to bring them up. Because mentoring is reproducing yourself from a leadership standpoint, and it's vital for a healthy ministry, a healthy church. Sarah has some excellent examples that she's going to share with us.
And some not
about some not excellent examples.
So one of the first things that I learned the hard way, this was long before I ever thought that I would be an ordained pastor, was the importance of being able to replace yourself, essentially, is to teach somebody how to do what you do to the point that you're actually not needed anymore. The first real ministry in charge of a ministry job that I had, paid position, was I was the youth pastor at First UMC on the campus of U of A in Tucson. And so I was in college at the time too, but then I was also 20 hours a week. That was my college job. Pretty sweet, yeah. First I worked at Mervin's and then decided I don't want to do that anymore. In the children's department, which was, so then I got the youth leader job, and I thought, oh, this is really cool, right? But I did everything myself, and I felt like that's what my job was that they had hired me to, come up with the lessons, and they'd hired me to actually be the Sunday school teacher in the mornings, and they'd hired me to actually be the youth leader in the evenings. And it was a totally foreign idea for me to ask for some of the parents to come and help bring some of their expertise, or to identify other leaders in the church and teach them also how to do this. I mean, I didn't even have a plan for when I was sick. So if I wasn't feeling good, I just went. I just did it. And what do you know? After 2.5 years, when I graduated from college and I moved on and I wasn't doing that job anymore, what do you think happened to that youth group?
It ended.
Done. Yeah. Pretty much as soon as I walked out the door. Done. Which is heartbreaking. When you work so hard for something that you love, right? The thing that you want most is you want to see it succeed. And so that experience taught me the importance of teaching others how to do what you do, so that it can live on even when maybe you are not going to actually do those day-to-day tasks anymore. So from then on, actually, every every time I've stepped into a new ministry, I've learned ways in which to do that. And it really did develop over the different churches that I've been a part of. So this is my 7th church, 7th location that I've served in ministry. And that's not all from the bishop that counts my lay ministry days. But that's all my like paid ministry staff sort of thing. So 7 churches later, actually 6 churches later, the one that I was at in Illinois, I guess this was the 5th one, okay. The one I was at in Illinois, I feel like I really started to understand what it meant to teach people. And so, you know, even down to a small micro level, I realized how important it was to talk people through the details and to listen to their questions. And so eventually, like, that entire ministry took a totally different shape just based on the idea that mentoring was the most important thing that I could do. So no longer was I really like the face of that youth ministry. We actually decided that it would be better to even divide it up. And so instead of having the main focus of that ministry on like, you know, like one big youth group on Sunday night, I mean, we still did that, but the main focus of the ministry was the small groups. And we trained up volunteers from inside of the church on how to basically like facilitate a small group for junior high kids, senior high kids. And we had, I mean, it was a small church. It was actually a community a lot like this. It was like that blend of rural and suburban on the outskirts of kind of the metropolitan area. And anyway, so for that small little church, about the same size, they had a junior high girls small group that had about a dozen girls in it every single week. Junior high boys small group, senior high girls, senior high boys. That's a lot of teenagers. Think about it, in a church this size, it's a lot of teenagers. And the only way that they were able to keep that ministry going was because there were so many leaders directly involved in that ministry. And it was a constant, like the goal was a constant flow from me as a staff person training this one level of leaders that were the main leaders of each group, but then them also then training their second. Every group had a second. So those leaders were training these leaders. And together, all of these were training all of the kids also in ideas of leadership. So then the most beautiful thing I felt like that came out of it by the time I left that church, the kids had started to become leaders in different ministries in the church. Stuff that a lot of churches think only the adults can do. Like they sat on, oh my goodness, they sat on committees. They were leading in worship. You know, they were more instrumental in the leading of things like VBS or the children's Sunday school than just like showing up and being a warm body. They did some of the planning. They did some of the visioning, that sort of thing. And it all started from the idea that mentoring is most important. And then all the other ideas and all the other like driving force behind that came from the mentoring relationships.
So to kind of give you an idea of how important mentoring is, I feel like I've heard this story before about Billy Graham. Did you preach on this?
No, I think it's in a different week. We already talked about Billy Graham. Yeah.
Oh, so we all know who Billy Graham is, right? You know, I'm not asking if you agree with him or anything, but we all know who he is. He actually admitted that he thinks things would have been a lot better and things he would have been a lot wiser for him to spend time investing in just say 12 people, kind of like Jesus did with his disciples, rather than doing a revival after a revival. You know, he realized that his ministry really couldn't continue without him. You know, as we talked about with Sarah, like when she left, things just kind of dropped off. And while you could probably say he was very successful at what he did, can true success really happen if there's no one to succeed you and continue on, I guess, with what you're doing, what you're leading? And so, you know, our goal here is to kind of give you some tools to help train your successor, to help mentor someone under you. That way, you can move on to some other leadership position without having to worry about a position that you were just in. So Paul and Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2 said, "Timothy, what you have heard from me through many witnesses, teach other people who will be able to teach others as well." So there's a pattern there. Paul was a mentor to Timothy, and he said, go teach other people so that they may teach other people. Jesus pretty much said something very similar, go out and minister to the people around the world. So he sends the disciples out to around the land. God wants us to pass on our experience, our talents, our knowledge to those new people coming in and coming up. To put it another way, our goal during this soul discipleship course is to be sure that you are healthy, you are a healthy person, so that you are creating a healthy new ministry led by healthy people. And a healthy person has 3 types of people in their life. So if you print out the handout later this afternoon, I updated it. So there's a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. So if you don't, you can just remember this. So Paul is a mentor.
No, it's on the other side.
It should be on the
That's okay, just put it on the bottom.
front page.
Okay, just throw it on the bottom, there you go.
There are. Yeah, so I updated the Google Docs sheet, so you can go back and look at it. But I did that this afternoon. Sorry. But so Paul is the mentor, Barnabas is the encourager and the friend, and Timothy is the mentee.
This is the one I got.
I have it except for that.
The mentee, the person being mentored.
Okay, say that one more time.
Paul is the mentor, Barnabas is the encourager / friend, and Timothy is the mentee, the person Paul is mentoring. So the question is, do you have these 3 people in your lives? And so I actually want you to take a minute and think about it and write down who these people are for you. Who do you think they are? Or who could they potentially be?
Could you play some Jeopardy music, please?
Yeah. I know. Have you ever thought, unless you sit there and think about it, it's just one of the things you don't think about every day. Everyone got a few names? Yeah, no, maybe? So mine's easy, just because I was forced into this position. Sarah is my mentor. My classmates are my Barnabas, my friends, my encouragers. That's how I look at it anyways. And then I guess I'm the mentee in this situation, but I don't, at the moment, have anyone I'm really mentoring, unless you count youth that I meet on a daily basis. But, so that's it. Anyone else want to share theirs? I'm just curious. No?
Well,
Yeah.
Nina Yardley, who used to be
Yeah.
here, she's really been my mentor for many, many years. Not many people know it, but Nina and I used to get together every other Friday night. For years we did that.
Awesome.
Just talking and sharing and praying, and yeah, she means so much to me. And then I think I've had a lot of Barnabases over the years, but right now I'd say Nan with Rose is that person to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know about mentee. unless we count my Bible study group.
That's always, because you do lead it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that counts, because maybe you want to encourage one of them to maybe lead it. That'd be a great example. Maybe one others, no? Eileen.
I think that my parents were definitely mentors.
Yep.
They were also Barnabases. And several of the ministers that I have enjoyed attending their services have definitely been mentors, and they've also been encouragers and friends.
Yeah.
And one that is very encouraging right now, she tries to encourage me to do things that I enjoy doing and forgetting about things that I probably should be doing and don't, is my daughter.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you for sharing, you two. That's wonderful. So tonight, we're doing like two main objectives. It's how to find a successor, and then two, how to train them. So, how do you find someone to mentor? Any thoughts? No? No idea? You're just waiting on me? Okay. So, I started by asking you if you have a mentor, because that sometimes can be a good place to start. Someone who's helped you in your ministry can often help point you in a direction of someone you can mentor. And that could be, someone, a staff person, or another lead person in a leader position, a Sunday school teacher, a Bible, a men's group leader. There are many places within our organization to go to say, hey, I'm looking for someone to mentor. If you don't find your replacement, then there will forever be this culture of, within the church, of a few people doing the bulk of the work. We've all heard that. What is it, 20% of the people doing 80% of the work? And so that's really the idea from finding someone to mentor, is to train them up to lead so that they can go out and find more leaders. And eventually we're a community full of leaders who go out and do things. And one thing you want to look at is, what's your ministry area? So Jerry, if I may use you as an example, you work primarily to do the food drive. That's serving others. I don't know what we want to call that, but that's your ministry area. And so she would be looking, if she wants to mentor someone in that, someone to fill that void, someone who has that same passion as she does. Because if you don't, if you're not going to start looking for someone, who's going to? Because far too often, volunteers just assume that the staff or the pastors or the leadership board are going to replace their position for them, and then that's when ministries stop. From a youth ministry to a habitat ministry, if you're dependent on someone else to fill your position, then chances are when you leave, because we all have a bunch of things to do, right? We're all busy, so things just fall through the cracks and don't get picked up. And it's actually kind of an immature way of looking at ministry. It's just assuming that someone will replace you when you leave. So you should never just volunteer for a ministry to fill a void at church because the pastor asked you to. Because then you're really kind of doing it for the wrong reasons.
No.
Because we're all here to serve the church by serving God, where God, the Lord leads us. Because if that's the case, then your heart should break when the ministry struggles when you leave, right? Sarah again shared her thoughts in the youth group. Like, that's heartbreaking because you worked really hard, put your heart into something, and you leave and it just dies. That is crushing. So I assume a lot of you have prayed for your area in ministry, whether it's doing the food drive, Stephen Ministries, the men's group, what else? Children's ministries, Bible studies. So we all have these things that we pray for, people that we're involved with, we pray with. Jesus prayed for his disciples before he went out looking for them. He went alone to pray and asked God, like, what am I looking for? And this may be kind of a shifting of the way you look at things. But the best leaders aren't those who do the ministry, but those who train others to do the ministry along with them. Ephesians, if you go to Ephesians 4, 11 through 14, anyone who wants to know, it says that pastors and leaders, it says that the pastor leader is to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And so, you're the saints. We're not really saints, but those bringing up within the church. So in other words, we need to work ourselves out of the job. Because wouldn't it be so incredible that if we could go off on vacation, or if you went away for the winter, or if you moved into another area of ministry because you felt called to it, and there was no glitches, there was no need for that person to continually come to you and ask you. You trusted that person. You had assurance that that person would be able to handle the ministry area. So, who has been on your radar, if anybody? Have you noticed kind of anybody that's like super volunteers within our church? At every event, loves being here, loves working with people, kids, whatever your certain ministry area is. And this person may not see themselves as a leader yet. I remember the day that I was asked to be a youth leader at First Mesa. Like, I was just walking into church, and the pastor at the time comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Asa, you want to be a youth leader?" Sure, Jim. Because I don't think I would have done it had I not been asked, in all honesty. Even though I had grown up in a strong youth program, and I wanted to give back. I never saw myself doing something like that until I was asked. And I honestly don't know what my life would be like had it not happened. Like, it's one of those events in my life when I tell my story that I have to mention, because that's what ultimately kind of brought me here. And so, these are kind of the moments that are game changers in our lives. And you have the potential to change someone's life, really, when you go and ask them to be a leader, whether it's to do a devotional, or to lead a Bible study class, or to help lead a community program by, one of the Queen Creek events. And so there are like 5 things. So if you look at your notes, the 5 C's. Yeah, that's you. Come on up.
Okay, so there's 5 ways that you can sort of
help identify somebody.
Yeah, vet.
Let me bring you in there.
Yeah. So the 5 C's. The first one, is this like a handout? You have to fill them in.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Character is the first one. And so, when you're evaluating character, it's just like you would evaluate character in any other area of your life. But you're going to keep an eye uniquely for, do they have kind of a Christ-like demeanor, Christ focus in their lifestyle? And my advice on this is just kind of go with your gut, right? Like, I really don't think that there's like a legalistic way to determine this, but if you feel in your gut, and this person really gets it, like they really understand the way that Christ would have lived or would have had you live, then you should listen to that, But if you have kind of an inkling, like this weird feeling, you know what I mean? That gut feeling where you're like, something is missing here. I don't feel like they really understand. You should listen to that too. So that's character. Then you should consider calling. And I feel like the next 2 kind of go together. So the second one is calling, and the third one is chemistry. So calling is one of those like sort of churchy words that's hard to define, and I like to talk about the difference between a career and a vocation, or a job and a vocation. when I throw those words around, does that kind of like trigger there is a difference in that? You know, where you do a career, you do a job because it's kind of task based and you're trying to get a certain result out of it. Usually a paycheck, roof over the head, food on the table, right? That's career, that's job. But vocation is different because it involves this word calling. A vocation is something that you are just like uniquely gifted and you are so strongly passionate about that you can't live your life without doing it. And so a calling, I mean, it may be your day-to-day job, and people who like have that, you know, coinciding of what they do for their job and their calling and the two in one, I mean, that's great, right? But sometimes it doesn't work that way. And sometimes you can identify, hey, this person really does have a calling in a certain area, which it may not show up in their day-to-day tasks, or it may not show up in the job they've held for their whole life. So do they have a sense of being called to the specific area of ministry? And you again want to consider, would they say yes if I asked them to do this, just because they would sense that there's a void, and so they should fill that void. Always go with the sense of calling. And then the other side of that is chemistry. So do they really have the chemistry to do the ministry that they might be called to? Do they have good people skills? If that's a factor in what they would be doing. Do you get kind of a warm, positive emotional response when they walk in the room? So this chemistry is actually also the chemistry, not just for the ministry they would do, but between mentor and mentee. Can you work with that person? Do you look forward to seeing them? Do you like being in the same room? Because if you're going to be a mentor for somebody, you're going to spend a lot of time with them. So that's definitely something to consider. The fourth one is capability. Do they have skills? Can they follow through? Do they do what they say they can do? And then the fifth one is commitment. So for that one, I mean, you may want to consider, all right, so I kind of see something in this person, and I feel like we could work together, and I sense a calling there, but I haven't really known them all that long, and so I'm not really sure if they would be committed. So the question you can ask yourself is, do they keep showing up? I mean, or do you get the sense that they're kind of more committed to something else? Because a lot of times that's kind of the breaking point. So all four of those other things might fall into place, but if they're really more committed to being a part of a different group, or they're really more committed to like a hobby or something else in their family, then it's not going to work. That mentoring relationship is not going to work.
So I have an idea. No,
Yeah.
but you want to go off script and give an example?
Okay.
Okay, stay up here.
Oh no. This involves me. Okay.
Yes. Well, okay, so I joke that I was forced into this relationship.
Yeah.
But I had to go find my own internship site. It was left to me to go find my site. So find my supervisor, aka my mentor. And so I figured we could talk about that.
Oh, and how that
Yes,
happened?
how that happened.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure y'all are curious.
Yeah. It was actually not a quick process.
No, was it?
Yeah. So, okay, I'd heard of you.
Okay, so I went to visit Isla in July, and she was just becoming the registrar. Sarah is the registrar for the conference board coordination. So Arizona, South Nevada, she's in charge. So
Everybody who comes through and wants to get ordained has to submit all their stuff through me.
So,
Whoa.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure. So, First Church of Mesa posted a picture of me visiting Isla in July, and so she reached out to me. She's like, hey, Asa, I'm this person for the conference. If you need anything, let me know. I'm sure there was a lot more to it than that. But she's like, let me know if you need anything. And I said, yeah, thanks, yada, yada. So fast forward to February. That's when we were supposed to start thinking about earning, because most people do it their second year of school. And so I had to start thinking about it. And I had a lot more to consider. A big one for me was the financial aspect of leaving my job to do this. And so I had to make sure that was squared away for me to be able to do my internship. So I sent her a message. I'm looking for an internship site because I emailed another pastor downtown Phoenix. So I sent her a message like, I'm looking for an internship. If you hear of anybody, let me know. I kid you not. Her response was, I need an intern.
Why not?
So, and that started the conversation.
Yeah.
And then we met. We met actually during Lent. Our first
It was
Bible
about
study.
a year ago.
It was about a year ago. It's been about a year.
So we had this whole process where I was like, okay, so we should meet, but you should also get to know the church. So that, I think,
Right.
was part of the chemistry. And so he came out when we were doing our Lent Bible study. We did the one where you fast from technology and stuff, so we were there for that one.
Yes.
I know, it was
Right?
different. So Asa came out for one of the evening, he was here for an
Yeah.
evening, and he was trying us out. He was seeing
Pretty much.
what the church looked like.
And Tim was
Like,
here, just so you know.
Who? Oh, Tim
Yeah.
was here.
Tim was here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't know if that's good or bad. That's what I. Tim Sheehan.
Tim Sheehan.
Oh, Tim
And you
Sheehan.
still came?
Yeah, right? That's what I love to go with.
So anyway, yeah, it was a process.
And that was like our first actual meeting, too, right? Yeah. And so I didn't know if you were like,
So where were you,
Go-
Sarah?
yeah,
on
that's
the,
what-
on the invitation. Had you pretty much covered your 5 C's, or were you in the process of checking
Oh,
off
at that-
3 of those?
at that point. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I mean, was this part of the process for you, or
yeah.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't have even maybe extended the invitation until you had kind of felt in your gut that this looks like it might be a good fit?
I think maybe it's fair to say this is a good discussion because I feel like maybe each of us starts at a different C. I probably start from calling.
Or maybe even the chemistry, probably.
Or maybe the chemistry,
Yeah,
yeah.
like if I can't deal with this person, then you
Yeah.
care less about their calling.
Pretty much.
if she's going to get her
And there you
haircut
have
halfway
it.
through.
I probably start with calling and then maybe skip to commitment because for me, like once I heard, I mean, remember back to the first conversation, which was, oh, you are experiencing a call to ministry and you will be here in this conference. I'm just gonna test the waters. I'm gonna put a little antenna out there and let you know that we're here.
Yeah.
And then it was quite some time before he came back, and that then indicated to me the commitment. Yeah. So then it was worth going down the road of chemistry capability.
It was. And I came to a church service. I came to 9:30, and I stayed over
Oh,
till
yeah, that's
3:11 for like half of it.
You know, I think when you talked earlier about the invitation, when you approach somebody to say, I'd really like to see if maybe at some point you may be able to do what I'm doing. And that, I think that invitation, when you were mentioning Asa, is there's a certain acknowledgement when the invitation is given that creates a whole new opening for an individual. One is it really kind of, it allows you to feel really good that this person, especially depending on what the position is, you can say, we'd like for you to clean up outside here, once a week, clean up the trash. But when you say, hey, I'd like for you to represent me and our church, or I would like for you to teach my Sunday school class when I'm not there, that's a big deal, I think. And anytime, I know when people ask me about something, I feel a strong flowing of acknowledgement that they think I am good enough to do that. And I think that really goes a long way in terms of that. So I think just how that is that thing. One, you don't do it until you've probably covered some of these 5 C's in it, but when you were talking about that, about somebody, about that pastor asking you to be the youth leader, I was curious as to how you were feeling internally, even though you said, okay, there's going to be a whole lot of commitment or doing this, whatever, and that, did you feel, some acknowledgement that he had confidence in you to even extend that invitation?
Yes, and it was also great timing. I was, at that point in my life, I was going through a rough breakup. And so, And so it was like, will you do this? I was like, at first I wasn't sure I wanted to. I was like, well, come anyways, and if you don't like it, you don't have to. And so I was like, no, I needed something like that in my life at that point, honestly, to like get my mind off other things and like help teach people, and be the example that I had when I was a youth. Like I had a great youth director, and I wanted to be that for the kids that I was now leading, which is just another example of mentoring and teaching people about that. And so I should say that due to IELTS requirements for my internship, like the mentoring is a little more like structured. Like I had to come up with things I wanted to learn in this position, and so she had to agree to them. And so those are things that was like preaching. That's what things I'm focusing on. Which worked me because I want to be a pastor, so that makes sense, right? And so like when I was looking for a supervisor, I wanted someone with experience, someone I knew I would get along with, someone I knew that could help me. And so.
Yeah. To your point, Joe, though, I think there's a sense of you can plant a seed, right? You don't know what will happen with that seed, and you may actually not get to see it grow. But as a leader, like it is your responsibility that when you see that, you go and you call that out, you plant the seed, right? Regardless of what happens. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Let's skip to training your successor. So, I actually am going to write these on the board because
You want to erase that?
it's good to have it. Yeah, I can do that. It's good to have it all written out. So these actually come from a book called Exponential. And that entire book is about mentoring relationships and building up leaders in the church. But so there's a step-by-step process in training your successor. The first one is I do, you watch. We talk. Okay? So it's just like it sounds. You are still the one who is doing all the busy work. You are doing the tasks. You are setting the example. This is such an important step because if you skip this step, then the person you're mentoring never has a complete picture of what it should look like when they get to an end result. The second step is I do. So you're still doing all the tasks. You're not stepping away yet. You help. We talk. I think it's we talk every time. Okay. So there's always a feedback after each. So think about Ace's invitation to help with youth ministry. He's seen it. He's watched it. He was already a member of the church, right? And then they invited him to come and help with youth ministry. Well, just come. This is the second step. You're just going to come. You're going to help. If it's not your thing, you can still back out. Number 3, you do. So now we're switching it.
Thinking the same thing.
What's that?
What? This
Sounds like having a student teacher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Yes.
it is.
We've all had them in our classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
Not me,
That's
but
a great
that's what I was.
example.
I never did. No. But I was the student in the classroom.
But I mentored.
Yeah.
Yes, this is exactly like that. It's exactly like student
It's
teaching.
like
the
work.
It's the
same
model
thing
for
we
it.
do
It's
with
like
our
work
field
training.
training officers. Policeman comes out of the academy. The FTO program is the same kind of thing, That same process. It's great. Yeah.
Amazing how many resources that you all already have at your fingertips, right? So just, I mean, take those resources that you've done your whole life and now think of them in terms of church leadership, in volunteer work. So you can predict the next. So we've switched it. You do, I help, we talk. So what's next? You do.
I go home.
I watch.
You do, you help, and you talk.
We talk. And then the fifth one. This one is key. So instead of you do, I go home. You do, and then someone else watches.
Oh.
Keep the cycle going. Yeah. All right, so there's a great example of how this is actually happening in our church right now. And I'll do this quick. How are we doing? Oh yeah, goodness.
You're playing time, don't worry.
Okay. She gave you a look. Great example of how this is happening right now that just came about this Sunday. So we've been needing some more like ushers, greeters at morning services. And we pinpointed and went and asked a couple of people. I went to them after service at 10:30 and then linked them with Kara, who has just got that whole thing mastered down. I mean, there's several people in the church who could do that, but she's the one that's doing it. And this is what they're doing on Sunday. So they've already had this step because they've sat in worship and they've watched, right? Then this Sunday, Kara will be there and she's going to do, and they're going to help. So she's still leading the whole process and she's directing them. Afterwards, they'll talk. They get to ask questions. The following time, the next time that they come to usher, they will be the ones who are leading the process, but she'll be there to assist them, and they'll answer questions again afterwards. And maybe give feedback. At this point, those people might have some ideas of how to do this. And then the next one, they are really owning this. And Kara's just sort of checking in. And they talk. The next step is they're going to teach somebody else how to do it. Yeah. This is how we avoid burnout. This is how we keep expanding our ministry. We replace ourselves. So here's some just fun facts and figures. Our goal is to reproduce healthy people, not just worker bees. So how did Jesus train people? Jesus was asked 180 questions, but he only answered 7 of them. That means he retorted with 173 questions. That's a whole other perspective on mentoring, right? Questions like, who do people say that I am? What do you want me to do for you? Do you want to get well? Why are you afraid? Can salt lose its saltiness? Do you know what the kingdom of God is like? We can ask questions throughout this process, and we don't have to have all the answers in order to be a mentor. I took your marker.
So just a funny note on this. So when I was at Honeywell, I actually didn't get this. It was Asa, go do this. I had to go figure it out. Which is why now whenever someone asks me to do anything, I'll say, I got this, and just go do it. Because now it's just like, whatever, I'll figure it out. So I don't know if that's a good way to do it or not, but it worked for me.
Baptism by fire.
Yes, exactly, trial of fire.
Last handout.
Yes, so the 7 critical questions to memorize to use in conversation. When just talking with your mentor slash mentee, or when you're looking for it. So number 1 is why. So why do you need me to do this? Why? Because you're inviting someone to be a mentee. So why? Then there's the big picture question. If you could only do one measurable thing in the next 90 days that would make a 50% difference, what would you do? And so that's trying to figure out someone's ministry area. Yeah?
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, can I
I don't know.
ask another question?
Go ahead.
Are these questions that the mentor is asking or the mentee?
A mentor.
Okay.
I think it's the mentor.
So the why question is, why do I want a mentee, or why does the mentee want to be?
Why do I want you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait. Well, I would think it's why.
Why do you want to do this?
Right. Yes.
Why do you want to do this?
Why do you want to do this?
Why do you?
That's why
just you.
the mentor is asking. Well,
mentee?
maybe not.
Maybe
Yeah.
the mentee's Yeah. asking, why do you want me?
No, you're
Yeah.
right, because it would be Jesus asking. Jesus responded with the questions, and we're supposed to be mimicking Jesus. So Jesus was the mentor, so these are the questions he asked, right?
Yes. I don't know.
So I see
That
it as
made
like
it
if
more
somebody asks you,
confusing.
why do we do
I'm
it
sorry.
this way,
No.
the mentor would say, well, why do you think we do it this way?
That's true. That's a good
That's
yes.
the way for what it's worth.
These are probably just in general conversation. These could be used like
They're
in,
guided.
in a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, they're guiding questions for how you can work with your mentee. So if you look down later, like look at the shape one, number 5.
So number 5 is to understand their shape. Of all things you do well, what do people say you do best?
So you're asking them to think about it. So it's you asking questions of your mentee. Should, like Stacy said.
So is that an acronym, shape?
Shape. Yeah, that was I don't even. Are we like lesson 1, 2?
Yeah.
It was early, yeah.
Oh, have it.
Oh, she's prepared.
Somewhere.
On chapter 5.
Spiritual gifts, heart, abilities, personality, and experiences.
And that, yeah, that was leading yourselves, right? I think that was lesson 2, which was leading
My
yourselves.
Shape, my shape is.
Yeah, leading my shape is. And so we were looking at who we are, and so we're in turn looking at who this potential mentee is.
So, I'm sorry, so the why is, why, what?
Why do you want to do this?
Why do you, why would,
Okay.
that's how I would look at it. Why do you want to do this?
Okay.
So when do you ask that? Like, these aren't in any order, are they?
When you recognize, no, I would say when you recognize, when someone either approaches you or you recognize someone.
Oh, someone says they want to help.
Yeah.
Okay. You haven't asked them. They just say, I want to be there with.
So one example of this. So since we already threw out our relationship, so when this is a question we come back to over and over because Asa is preparing to take on a different level of leadership role, right? So I'm constantly asking him, why are you doing this? Why have you chosen to do this role with your time, your talents, your passion, instead of anything else? So it's kind of a constant reshaping of the answer to that question, and I can't give it to him. I need him to come up with it, right? So as you're mentoring someone, they might say, well, I really want to be a leader in the men's group. So you're going to say, why?
So it's almost like, what are their motives?
It's one of their motives, but you need them to formulate their
For them to
calling.
understand their motives.
Yeah, you want them to say something like, well, I'm really passionate about men making a connection with Christ, or something like that, right? You need them to say that. You can't give it to them.
This sort of clarifies their calling, and it shows you whether they have a passion for it or not.
Yeah. It actually trains you better on how to continue that mentoring relationship, because you might assume that their answer is something totally different, and you would be directing them and on a different path, and yeah. Okay.
So the next was the big picture question. And so I'm going to reword it. But if you could do one measurable thing for the next 90 days, it would make a difference. What would you do? And so that's getting into what's that person's passion, what's that person's calling. So if Stacy's looking for a mentee, she's looking for someone that wants to work with kids and families. Right? Jerry wants someone who likes to serve and work with other nonprofit communities like Panda Vida. Sorry?
Repeat number 2 again?
Yes, big picture question. If you could do only one measurable thing in the next 90 days that would make a difference, what would you do?
Like the vision.
Yeah, kind of like a vision. Vision, motivations. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's your vision.
And it forces them to be specific. So
It does, because you're asking for one thing.
if Stacy asked someone in sort of her wheelhouse that question, they might come back and say, the one measurable thing that I want to do in 90 days is I want to recruit 2 more Sunday school teachers.
Yeah,
That might be their one measurable thing.
because that would make a difference.
But we're talking big picture though.
Not necessarily.
I mean, to me,
Not all the
that's,
time.
Yes, but it's the big picture in a certain ministry area.
I was like, I want to end hunger. My children in
I want
East
peace
Valley.
in the
Not
world.
30 mile big picture, just 30,000 feet.
Okay, so
There are different ways to think of big picture. So we got the whole church big picture, then you got individual men's area.
Big picture.
So if you were looking for someone to mentor, say for the men's group, their big picture would be to that specific ministry area, and not the biggest picture of the whole church. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So number 3 is to understand adult comfort zones. So what were you like in the 4th grade? What is the person you want to be a mentee to comfortable with? I'm trying to. I can't think of a good example right now.
Oh, yeah.
But
You've changed since then.
Right. So you're trying to get a picture of the things that they might be apt to do if they weren't afraid, if they didn't have all their adult comfort zones.
Impulsive.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I'd say
Because
middle school.
when you're a lot younger, you don't really have any
She's
fear.
Middle school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Impulsive.
Yeah.
Were you that kid that always befriended the quiet kid or the one that was ostracized? Were you the class clown? Were you the
Were you in the principal's office?
the class clown? Yeah.
I didn't know.
What? You were?
Full time.
Were you really? Never.
Full time.
So number 4, instant spiritual depth. What are 3 changes in your life that would be most pleasing to God? That's a pretty deep question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And I think it's important, especially in our setting of church ministry and church leadership. I don't even know how I would answer that question right now.
Well, that answer would change over time.
Yes. Well,
Probably
these
constantly change.
all
Oh,
these
yeah.
these will all probably change over time, but
Yeah, you could scare people away with some of these.
These are questions after you have cemented the commitment.
Bring 'em in, okay.
Don't come out the gate with that one.
No way out.
Gotta lose 'em fast.
No way out.
maybe I'm not quite ready for this.
I know.
This is you're actually training your successor now. You're not identifying them. You're training them.
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, this
We're
is easier to
moving.
help the relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
So number 5 is understand their shape. So of all the things that you do well, what do people say you do best? And I have to go back and look at your notes about shape to figure out what those are. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
They are spiritual gifts,
Spiritual
heart,
gifts, heart. So what?
abilities,
Abilities,
personality,
personality,
experiences.
experiences. Thank you. It's awesome to see people prepared.
I wasn't prepared. I just brought my notebook.
I call that being prepared.
Carry the J. Mine are in a pile.
Experience. He is
Yeah,
experience.
She's a J, Myers-Briggs J, so she would have that all ordered.
Oh yeah. 6, which is the best non-threatening question. Is there something heavy on your shoulders today? So is there something on your mind? Is there something that's got you down? Is there something, that's another way to ask that question. Are you okay? It's like the broadest one.
Or if you're Wesley, how is it with your soul?
How is it with your soul?
Ooh, I like
That's
that.
right. I like that one.
It is well with my soul.
It is well.
How is it with my soul? And 7, the last one. The vision-inducing question. If you could do anything you wanted and knew for certain that you couldn't fail, what would you do?
Can I add to that?
And given unlimited resources. Is that what you're
And
gonna do?
given, well, that too, yeah. No, I would add to that, there's another question that an author that I read added to that. So if you knew, let's see, even if you did fail, what would be worth doing anyway?
Ooh.
That's another good question. So do you need me to reread? So if you could do anything you wanted and knew for certain that you couldn't fail, what would you do? And then Sarah, just an extra one which I liked. So even if you were going to fail, what would you do anyways?
What would be worth doing?
What would be worth doing anyways? And that's it. So go find someone to mentor by next week.
That's your homework.
Sure.
Go forth and take disciples. No, I just. We're done. We're going to pray.
What was the P in
Personality. So get in our oblong circle.
Our oblong circle. I like it.
What would be worth doing?
You know what I do? I'd be a farmer all day long. I would just garden.
You'd have your chickens, wouldn't you?
I would just sit and play with my chickens and farm and garden all day. I'd be in hog heaven. I'd never have a bad crop of tomatoes. How awesome would that be? Everything I did would grow. Sounds good.
What would be worth doing?
Farmer would I have. My husband doesn't agree though. That's the problem. Well, yeah.
I know, I'm working on it.
What does he know?
That's true. But it's our oblong circle. Healed.
Get in our oval.
So, speaking of mentoring, would anyone like to pray us out this evening?
I'll pray.
Thank you, sir.
Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight thanking you for this opportunity to learn some new things, and stretch and grow, and help this church grow through this mentoring that we're going to be doing. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Everyone go home.
Cheers.
Oh, you were playing? I'm so sorry.
I know. You'd be angry if you forgot that. Although your keys are probably in it.
It was very good. Very good.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I know.